Okay, so welcome everybody. Welcome to all our viewers throughout the world on TorahAnytime.com. We encourage everybody to remember, please, that the annual campaign, the only fundraiser of the year for BJX, which allows us to be viable and be sustained, is on Tuesday, March 3rd. So please go to helpbjx.com and do whatever you possibly can. Yashkoch. Okay, so we're in the Daf Yomi. Today's Daf is Daf Nun Daled. And the last Mishnah, very exciting, last Mishnah, Maseches Berachos. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's the longest Mishnah because it's the only Mishnah in the Parak. Everything else is commentary on Gemara on this Mishnah. So we start with Haroya. Haroya Makom Shnasa Bay Nisim. If you see a place, if you frequent a place, if you encounter a locale where Klal Yisrael had a nace, a miracle occurred for them. So a person, it's incumbent, it's a person's mechuyev, is obligated to say, Baruch she'asa nisan l'avosenu b'makom hazeh. Blessed is Hashem who performed a miracle for our forefathers, our ancestors in this place. Right? If a person has a personal miracle that he or she experienced, then he has to say, Baruch she'asa li nes b'makom hazeh. Rav Zilberstein has many tshuvas, Rachmana litzlan, about people that experienced, that were survivors of terrorist attacks in Eretz Yisrael. You remember after the Intifada, where they used to do the bus explosions. So he speaks a lot about that, where, you know, how close you have to be to the explosion. Let's say a bomb was almost detonated, but it didn't detonate. And the person was spared. There was no casualty, but there was almost a casualty. Does that count? And there are very similar halachas in regards to Berachos Agoma, which we'll see is on the base, about thanking Hashem for having a miracle occur. But Rav Moshe usually says, Rav Moshe's mahalach, his protocol and guidelines for Berachos Agoma, is that you have to actually have sustained. There had to be contact. It wasn't that it almost happened or it could have or would have happened. But it had to be something that actually occurred that you were spared from. That's where Moshe holds, So l'chara would be the same thing with Nes. Now, the Gemara, the Mishnah, interestingly enough, doesn't bring down the Shem Malchus. It says Baruch Shas, and it doesn't say Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam. Look at Tosfos, the first Tosfos on the Amud, the first of the three Tosfosim. Tosfos, a headline is Haroya. Tosfos says, Pirush Rabbi Shmaya, the Chalhani Brachos Srichas Lahaskar Shem Malchus. That Rabbi Shmaya, the Baal Tosfos, says that all these brachos that the Mishnah is going to recite, the whole litany of brachos, you have to say Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu, the normal formulation for bracha. You have to say Shem Malchus, Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, and he brings that from Rishim Shem Mikusi, Sar Mikusi, another famous Baal Tosfos, also, and that you have to say the Shema Malchus. Okay. Then he says, Makom Shenekra Mimenu, the Mishnah says, Mishnah Kedis, a place in Makom Shenekra Mimenu Akum, that a place that was uprooted, that they were able to demolish the Avodah Zarah in the place. There's another bracha. They say, Baruch She'okar Akum Eretzenu, the blessed is Hashem that abolished or that removed the Akum, the idolatry from our land. Tosfos has an interesting shita. If you look at the second Tosfos, brings up the Yerushalmi, that it's dafka if it's uprooted from the entire Eretz Yisrael. If there's one vestige, if there's one remnant, if there's one isolated place that still has Avodah Zarah, according to Tosfos, you can't make the bracha. Well, we spoke in the past that after the Medinas Yisrael was established in 1948, they had shilas about maintaining the Avodah Zarahs, because technically, once into Jewish hands, you have to uproot it. So we brought down a shita from the Meiri that says, we spoke about this in the past, that the Meiri says that it could be that the Gentile places, you're not mechuyev to uproot it because they're not mitzvah and shutfis in combining the Hashem with another type of potential deity, although that would be blasphemous and idolatrous and a total heresy for a Jew, but for a guy not. And maybe that's the basis for maintaining it in Eretz Yisrael, even though it's under Jewish hegemony, Jewish jurisdiction. Okay, let's go a little further. Then he speaks about comets. The Mishnah speaks about comets and earthquakes, all different types. It could be that it's a hurricane alluded to also over here, according to many shitas, and a harim on huge, majestic mountains, like for example Everest and Himalayas, perhaps. Yamiva on the Haros. And then if you go a little further, it says Rabbi Yehuda says that he that sees a Yamagadol, the great ocean, as a Yamagadol. You say, Blessed Hashem who created the Yam HaGadol. The Shaila is, what is a Yam HaGadol? So Shulchan Aruch, big machlokas, big tumult over here. Does it refer to the Mediterranean? Mediterranean Sea. Now we know that technically speaking, in the ancient, they always spoke of, there's always the legend of the seven seas. All right, and even Kabbalah, it seems to, I think, speak about it as well. But technically speaking, oceanic-wise, there are four oceans, although now they claim that there are five oceans, four ocean basins, which is, of course, the Pacific, the Atlantic, the Indian, and the Arctic. But now they say that there may also be the Antarctic. It's a machlokes between those that are into oceanography, whether there's a fifth ocean or four oceans, the seven seas. But practically speaking, the Mishnah Berurah has a very big chiddush, where he wants to say that the Yam HaGadol does not refer to the Mediterranean. The Shulchan Aruch says that it's the ocean that's closest to Eretz Yisrael and Egypt, that body of water. But the Mishnah Berurah seems to say that it's referring to the Atlantic. Now, the Atlantic, it could be that the Atlantic was always known or thought of to be the largest ocean, and maybe that's what the Mishnah Berurah is speaking about. But Lamaisa, it's not. That's scientifically or realistically, if you talk about the largest body of water, that's incorrect, because the Pacific Ocean far outshines and far supersedes in the breadth and the scope of the size the Atlantic. So what does the Mishnah Berurah mean? What does Chafetz Chaim mean? Maybe he's talking about prominence because the Pacific wasn't considered to be as prominent as, you're talking about size, the Atlantic Ocean is only 40 million square miles and the Pacific is probably close to 70, certainly over 60 million square miles. It's much, much larger. So we're not 100% sure what the Chafetz Chaim in the Mishnah Berurah meant as far as the Atlantic Ocean, but there is a big machlokes. And because there's a machlokes, there was the Yam HaGadol, which refers to which body of water does it refer to the Mediterranean. As a matter of fact, there's a famous Meshech Chachma that speaks about this, because he says that the Mediterranean was a result, it wasn't a natural body of water. What do you mean it was a natural body of water? It wasn't from Sheshes Mei Berachos. We know that all mountains, and this has a lot of practical halachas, it really is a manifestation as far as Avodah Zarah is concerned, because you can't make a mountain into Avodah Zarah because Rebbeinu Shalom made it. The question is about trees, because you could technically plant a tree. You can't plant a mountain. An authentic mountain you can't plant. And that's why a mountain is supposed to be something that conjures up divinity. And it makes you think about the divine, something that you awestruck by. Esra'in Harim, the pasuk says in Tehillim. I look to the mountains. The Harim are supposed to, and of course there's many sugyas, many gemaras which speaks about, the mountain connecting you to the nature, which connects you to Rebbeinu Shalom, because you're so smitten by it, you're so overwhelmed and so awestruck by it. But as far as the Mediterranean, is it a natural body of water from Sheshes Mei Berachos? So it seems that the Medrash says that it was a result of the Dar HaFlaga, of the generation of dispersion, which seems to tie in to the whole hypothesis that continental drift theory was accurate, which the Chazal seem to indicate this, which science would also subscribe to, and I think this would be corroborated by science, that initially all of humanity, from the time of Adam and Noach, remember the Dar HaFlaga, many people are confused by this. The Dar HaFlaga happened 340 years after the Dar HaMabul. The Dar HaMabul, the Mabul was actually in 1656. We're not talking about the secular year 1650, obviously from creation, from Bria So'ilim, 1656. The way to remember that is Shem. Shin Mem, because they wanted to, according to Kabbalah, they wanted to make a name for themselves in the Dar HaFlaga. They wanted to contest the Rebbeinu Shalom. They wanted to argue against God, and that's why they scaffold. They made this whole tower. So the Rabbi Yomi has a fascinating aside where he says it was like a spaceship, that they actually made a spaceship to try to go argue with God. But so that was in the year 1996 of creation. It was a few years before 2000, because the same way we were worried about what was it called? Y2K, yeah. I remember Y2K, so I don't know, I'm embarrassed to admit, but I actually went to the supermarket and I bought, batteries, and I bought some canned goods. No, because they said that there will be a glitch in the computer system and everything will, revert back to Neanderthal times and, the Stone Age, whatever you want to say, So people were concerned, okay, rightfully so. So we also had we had a Y2K also, because in Kabbalah it's brought down that 2000 was supposed to be a seminal year for Kedushim, the Tahara. That was supposed to be the year that things were supposed to happen spiritually, but instead the Dar HaFlaga, the people came and they distorted things. There was a tremendous koyach, a tremendous hashpa, ruchnius, and zelu mazeh. So there was always a counter unfortunately, the counteraction was the Dora Floga, the Tumah, the contamination. So that was in 1996, but after the Dora Floga, until the Dora Floga, humanity lived on one plane, basically. And after that, the continent split up, and that's what it seems, and then you had the Mediterranean Sea form. So, if that's the case, then you can't say that the bracha, even oisim asher potentially, on any other ocean, a body of ocean, the Indian Ocean, if you're flying over potentially, or going on a boat certainly, then you could say oisim asher, any substantial body of water, even on haros, even on rivers that are not man-made, that are natural. All right, but the question is, the great ocean, the Yam HaGadol, what is that? And whether you could say the bracha, b'shem HaMalchus, on the Yam HaGadol, which one can you say? So since there's so many sveikas, many poskim say that you shouldn't say b'shem HaMalchus, since we don't know if it's Atlantic, or the Mediterranean, or the Pacific, so better not to say that on the Yam HaGadol. Okay, now let's go weiter.
I heard of Simon when he went to Gibraltar.
Oh yeah. Right.
He wanted to see both of them, make the bracha.
Right. So he said b'shem HaMalchus, or?
I'm not sure. Find out.
I remember such a thing, yeah. Yishkoch.
I think there's only ways in the world that you can see both.
You can see both, right. Yeah, Yishkoch, very good. Right, so I don't remember if he said b'shem Malchus, but excellent, yeah, Yishkoch. Now, let's go a little weiter. So much to do here, I'm telling you. Mamash Moli v'gadush, just it's so powerful and resplendent. There's so much also musar in this. There's so much. All right, we'll go to Nun. Maybe if we have time, we'll go back to the Mishnah that about the Yetzer Hara, the Yetzer Tov, that you're supposed to use both in service of the Eibishter. How to use the Yetzer Hara for the Rebbeinu Shalom, and then making a bracha Kishen Shem Vorchen Ala Tov. The same way you bless Hashem for the good, you also have to Chas Shalom Rachman Zlon, have to bless Hashem for the bad. There's so much musar and so much hashkafa here. But let's go to this Amud Beis, because we'll get the hashkafa and the halacha. So Amud Beis, it says, if you go to the Daf Nun Dalin Beis, which is page 108, 54b, and we go to now. We see with a very wide line, very wide line. It's probably around 20 lines from the top, and from the very wide lines, it's 3 lines from the very wide lines, 3 lines up. We're now 3 words from the beginning of the sentence, beginning of the line. Amrav Yehuda Marav is a member from Yehuda Marav. Arba Srichim L'Hoidos. There are 4 people that have to give thanksgiving to the Rebbeinu Shalom. 4 people that have to give gratitude to Hashem, a special acknowledgement to Hashem for the salvation, the miracle that they experienced. Yordei Hayam, those that go down to the ocean, those that are voyage in the sea. Holchem Baris, those that traverse the desert. The desert, obviously a sea we don't have to explain. There's ships that capsize all the time. There's pirates. There used to be pirates at least. And it's a dangerous. The waters are but right, yeah, that's what we're talking about. Exactly. Holchem Baris, those that go in, obviously a desert is very hostile and inhospitable. There's a lot of vehement, poisonous animals there, and people could be famished and dehydrated. Mishal Yechoyle, somebody that was sick from his Rabbi and got better. Mishal somebody was incarcerated, somebody that was put into prison. So all these 4, the Chidah used to say that the acronym, I think we spoke about this at a Sunday shir many years ago, was that Ches Yud Yud Mem, he used to say, right? That Chol HaChaim Yoduchasela, all those that are alive, we say in Shemon Esrei every day, 3 times a day. The Chol HaChaim, all those that are alive, Yoduchasela. People are fabisin, people complain about things, and people get verstopped in the cup. They get silly in the mind, and they say, oh, this and that. Kol neshima v'neshim, kol neshama taluk. Every breath that you take, thank you, Rabbi Chol HaChaim Yoduchasela. You're alive. See, the Chidah used to say Chol HaChaim is an acronym. The Ches Yud Yud Mem Yoduchasela has to give praise to Hashem. Ches is Chayla. Yud is for the Yam, the other Yud is for Yisurin, others that the base of Surin, the prison, and the Mem is for Midbaris. Those 4 have to give Adank, they have to give thanks to Chol HaChaim Yuduchasel, they have to give thanks to the Rebbeinu Shalom, to God. Now, as far as a Cholish Nisrapi, what does it mean a Cholish Nisrapi, a sick person that gets better, that heals? So the Taz holds that, and we just had, somebody just asked me the Shaila recently, Nebuch, he was in the hospital, and about Ben Shigayim, I told him, he was in the hospital at least 3 days, he was bedridden for 3 days in the hospital. Of course, even if he wasn't in the hospital, if he was at home, bedridden according to many poskim, many shitas, if it was something internal, if it was a rash, or external, it's a Shaila, but something certainly internal, the Achronim all cannot say, they'd have to say, so somebody, let's say Rahman has a flu, and he's really, he's in bed, he can't move for 3 days, Pashtus, he would have to say goimel. But if a person, let's say, has a chronic illness where he gets sick and gets better, every time he gets healed, the person can bring down that he would have to get up and he'd have to say goimel. Is a machlokes rishonim whether goimel is a chiyuv or reshus, whether it's obligatory, it's mandated, or if it's optional. So it's a big machlokes, but we side on it's interesting because even though it's a bracha, you say that suffer brachas are, but we err on the side of caution. Whatever the expression is, we actually do say the bracha. Most say that the l'chayra it is like a chiyuv. It borders on a chiyuv, but as far as a chayla, it's interesting because Marim Mintz had a famous shaila. It's a very bavusta shaila. And very controversial. He spoke about a clever 12-year-old boy that in Rahman got very sick, Nebuch, and he recovered, and the shaila is, could he say goimel? So the nusach of the bracha is hagoimel chayavim toivos. He that bestows, God who's the benefactor for those that are obligated, those that should perish, those that should have a terrible fate. Toivos, he gives them instead good. So most Rishonim say that a child is not considered chayiv. He's not chayiv. He's not obligated in mitzvahs. It's only chinuch, and therefore he can't make a bracha goimel chayavim because he wasn't chayiv. His father is chayiv. So the Marim Mintz brings down, but maybe he was a Gilgul, a reincarnation, and maybe he's suffering. He got sick in order to be masakein, in order to atone and rectify the misdeeds or the sins of his Gilgul, and therefore he should say it. On the other hand, Marim Mintz has another suffix. He says maybe it was the father's sins, right? When a child approaches 13, the father has to say, that now I'm absolved from this. But some teach up that the child is being absolved and is being exonerated from the father's sins because the halacha is, the Gemara says, that a child is considered to be an extension, an appendage of the father, and therefore if a father sins, then... and let's say he doesn't fulfill his vows, chas v'shalom, it could be a terrible klola on the child also. It's he's like considered to be like a limb of the father. So the Marim Mintz has all these sveikas, and he says, therefore maybe we should, since it's a suffix, better not to say anything at all. And therefore the psak l'maisa is that although there's another shita, the Kaf HaChaim, I think, no, I'm sorry, the Kaf HaChaim argues against the Chidah. Chidah holds that a child should say it. It's because maybe he's a Gilgul, or maybe, for some reason he is chayiv. But the Kaf HaChaim comes out not. L'maisa, we paskin that children should not say it. But as far as an illness is concerned, it has to be a real illness, and if a person recovers, then the person has to, should bench goimel. If a person wants to make a sudas haidaya, so usually we say that the person has to have a decent recovery. It's hard to gauge, recovery. If a person was mamish very, very, very sick, even though the illness is still there, but now the person's functioning and the person's mobile. Somebody just asked me this type of shaila. It's a hard thing to gauge. Now, what about incarceration? That's also a big machlokes, because many poskim can bring down that if the person was only not penalized, the person was imprisoned because of monetary judgments, then he doesn't have to say, shouldn't say Berachos HaGoimel. Because the assumption is that his safety is not being compromised because he's in a penitentiary that's devoted to financial crimes. Other parts can say no. Anytime a person's incarcerated, it's a sakana, it's dangerous, he's with bad people. Listen, it's always good to go and to be as honest and ethical as possible and not to do anything wrong. But that's a big machlokes. Whether a person that was incarcerated for, let's say, for those types of averos, a lot of poskim don't say it doesn't make a difference. As long as the person is incarcerated, they have to give shevach v'hodaya to Kadosh Baruch Hu, and then they would have to still. Now, Moshe has a fascinating teshuvah. It's in Chelakei, I think it's, if I remember correctly, Chelakei Orach Chaim. I think it's Siman Yudalad. Moshe has a teshuvah about a woman saying goimel, and it's a very innovative psak. And because Moshe says that why should there be any distinction, a differentiation between a man and woman? I mean, the safety and welfare is safety and welfare. A person's health. If a woman is subjected to danger, why should she be any different than a man as far as being obligated to thank Hashem? It's the same. It seems to be the same obligation. So Moshe says, but a man, it's a little different. Because a man, it seems that it's correlated, we don't know precisely why, but the Berachos HaGomel, the bracha of thanking Hashem, is correlated with Kriyas HaTorah. Where the minhag is that you say it dafka, you say it exclusively at Kriyas HaTorah. And he says that if you were remiss, and you didn't have the opportunity to say it during the Torah learning, you don't have to get an aliyah. It's nice to get an aliyah, but it's brought down al pi Kabbalah that a person should get an aliyah as often as possible. Obviously, each person shouldn't demand, an aliyah, but it's considered to be a skula if they could get a aliyah, let's say once a month. Obviously, you can't demand, and you have to trust a gabbai or trust a rav, whatever it is. The famous story about the Chafetz Chaim, where he speaks about the guy that comes into shul and he doesn't get any aliyah, and he has all these accusations. And little does he know that everything was allocated just the way it should be. He didn't know that this guy had this need and that person had that need. So it's a mashal for the Rabban Shalom, that a person comes into this world and says, hey, he's getting this and I'm not getting that. The Rabban Shalom is better than a gabbai. He knows the Rav. He knows much better what people need. So a person should never have time to say, I didn't get enough aliyahs, right? But it's always better to defer. There's more schusim. Rav Pam Zatzal always used to say that if you do something, if you're nelavim, if you defer, or that you are willing to forego, and for the sake of peace for someone else, you get more schusim and brachos than anybody else. But as far as a woman's concerned, obviously a woman's not getting a aliyah Torah, and even if a man cannot get a aliyah Torah, and he missed all the laning, he should still go up there when the Torah is there, and say, Hagam Melechayim Torah, while the Sefer Torah is there. Now, Moshe says that a woman, obviously is not in this realm, or this milieu at all. He says a man needs 10 people, and 10 people, I guess, is Barov HaMadrash Melch. There's more the multitude, the more exposure, the more publicity, the more gratitude to Hashem, and the more the miracle is spread. But a woman, there's a different type of need. And he says, and therefore, a woman would be, he says, suffice even for one person. To make a bracha. Now, the Mishnah Berurah doesn't say that. Mishnah Berurah, the mashmos from the Mishnah Berurah is that you need. It seems that the Rav Moshe is being chaylik on the Mishnah Berurah, and the Mishnah Berurah seems to say you need a minyan. Although the fascinating psak in the Mishnah Berurah that he says that the minyan could be comprised basically of all women. So therefore, you see that some liberal, right? Listen, it's always good, to tell the liberals, to tell the feminists, we're sure we're very feminist. You want a minyan for a gomel, you could be part of a minyan. Not only that. I remember there's a lady over here who comes every Erev Shabbos Chanukah, when we have to light the menorah, right? Erev Shabbos Chanukah, right before Shabbos. And she says, because she remembers, I once said one year that for Chanukah, the lighting of Chanukah Neros, you're allowed to have a minyan that women are allowed to participate in the minyan because in order to light the menorah in shul, to make a bracha, technically you have to have a minyan. And ladies are allowed to be mastari for that minyan because it has to do with pursuing Isa, with spreading, broadcasting the nace. It doesn't have to do with Dvarim Shebekdusha. It doesn't have to do with the holy matters. More it's spreading the nace. A woman could participate in that minyan. Also, by the way, you could have a minyan of, technically speaking, though we don't fear Azoi, we don't really postulate this, but for a zimun, a woman are allowed to technically have a zimun of 10 women. Also, for Megillah, could be sometimes you can have a minyan of women. But certainly for Chanukah licht benching,
you have a mixture of men and women?
Yeah, for Hanukkah, yeah. Hanukkah, yeah. I mean, maybe they should be separate or apart, but...
they don't have to be the same.
Yeah. But as far as Goimel is concerned, so the Mishnah Berurah says, I think he says maybe 8 or 9 women and 1 man. But the Moshe says that you could have one person. For the woman, one person suffices. And it could even be the husband, or it should be the husband. Maybe if it's a man, it should be the husband. Now, by the way, I have to tell you, Lamaisa, practically speaking, Rosh Shlomo Zalman speaks about this a lot, and Rosh Shlomo Zalman actually holds that you should have a minyan. You can have a minyan of men for the lady, and she goes and she says the bracha, but tznius. You could bring the minyan to her house, whatever it is. She doesn't have to be right with the men. She can be close by, whatever it is. But so a lot of poskim say that we don't do it at all today for women. They hear the husband's getting an aliyah. They say Baruch Hashem and Baruch Leved. That's pronouncing Hashem's glory. Also, a lot of different minhagim. There's nothing wrong. If a woman wants to do bench gomel, there's enough poskim that say that she could and should do it. But what's fascinating about Rav Moshe's psak, aside from the fact that he sees to be cholik in the Mishnah Berurah, he says that just one man is sufficient and the husband is good enough. This tshuva, I think we have a masorah because it says the Magia, the editor, whoever put out the chelik, hey, whatever, he says there that this is the last tshuva Moshe ever wrote in his life. This is the last tshuva, and he says that Moshe tried to write the tshuva. He didn't finish the tshuva, by the way. It's lacking. It's deficient, and therefore the real psak came from a verbal psak because he couldn't. He said he tried to do it 3 times. He tried to write the tshuva, and he couldn't. He didn't have the strength to do it. And not only that, because his eyesight, to remind me of a famous story, by the way, of Reb Chaim Kapasi, I think it was a contemporary of the Arizal. think. Or Rav Chaim Vital, rather, I'm sorry. Contemporary. Rav Chaim Vital was a Talmud of the Arizal, but didn't mean that he was contemporary with the Arizal. Arizal passed away very, very young, in his 30s. Rahman but I mean, for Arizal, there was nothing wrong, because that his tafkid, he fulfilled all his task, and a person can name for the Arizal. There's nothing wrong with naming for him. But Chaim Kapasi was a contemporary of Rabbi Chaim Vital, and he was a big Dayan, big Rav, a big tzaddik. Also, I think a Makobel probably as well. And I think we once said this story on a Friday night drasha, but he was accused. Terrible thing. They accused him of accepting bribery in a court case, shoichad, and they were trying to, ruin his life, ruin his career as a rav and everything. A terrible thing. They hunted him down. So he said he got up there at the bima, he made a klop, he made a bang. He said, Rabbi, he said, everybody, gentlemen, he said. Now it happens to be that Reb Chaim Kavasi was sorry, what? I'm sorry, Rav Chaim Kapasi, yeah, that he was blind, and that's why they accused him of that, because shaychad, bribery, yaver in chachamim, that the consequence is that it blinds the chachamim, blinds the way. So people translate literally that it will cause blindness. So, and his life was, they harassed him, and they, it was a libelous accusation. So he got up there and he says, everybody says, if I'm guilty, then I will stay blind. But if I'm innocent, then I will have my eyesight right now. So there was a hush in the audience. Everybody was just, you could hear a pin drop. And all of a sudden, he started identifying people that were in the pews, far away from him. He said this name and that name. He was able to see. Everybody said, miracle. And, now all the accusations fell away. A miracle happened, and he regained his eyesight. So there was an edus, I think that in the Sefer HaDoros, it's brought down that they testified that if you looked at his ksavim, his kisvei yad, his handwritten notes, his manuscript, from before he was healed and after he was healed. Before he was healed, you could see like he could barely write. It was so painstaking and tedious for him to write, and you saw he was writing basically blind. And afterwards, everything was straight. There was a total difference. Anybody that doubted the story said, "This is testimony that it's all emes. That's all true." Okay, so that's where Moshe's last Teshuvah, and so it's very, very fascinating. Was about a woman ben shagam. Okay, let's go weiter. Now let's go to Daf Nun Aleph. Okay, Nun Aleph, Amud Aleph.
I was just wondering about a couple of things. In the situation you mentioned before about benching Gomer, so could the husband bench Gomer for his wife?
So there's some poskim say yes, most poskim say not, that he can't bench on her behalf. No.
Oh. And but let's say a person's job requires them to travel, and they're always traveling, let's say, from one state to another. That means
so domestic travel will not require. We possibly domestic travel will not require.
Oh.
Yeah. Other poskim say otherwise with the Svardim, but we the poskim no. Yeah. Okay.
For Teshuvah, the ladies they say Berachos, but for women they can't say.
Well, so because Gomel technically requires to do it in the presence of a minion. So therefore, it's a little more problematic. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Okay.
So if there is no minyan, you cannot say gomer, just gomer.
But we say it by only with a minion. Yeah. Men. Yeah. Yeah. And preferably by Kriyas Torah, by by reading of the Torah. Okay, Nun Aleph Amud Aleph. Gemara says, Boy Minei Rav Chisda. We're now on the fourth line of the Gemara, the second to last word. Bo Minei Rav Chisda. Asked Rav Chisda, Misha Achav Shasa. A very interesting case of somebody that ate and drank v'lo birich. And he didn't make a bracha. Oy, what a shanda, right? Well, I see it all the time. People forget to make brachas. Eat a drink. How dare you? Where's your manners? Where's your etiquette? Say thank you. Ask Hashem permission. I say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, blessed do a Lord, creator of the universe, master of the universe. Please give me reshus, give me permission. I want to be able to eat this. Ma'u sheyachzu yivarech. Should he go ahead and ask Hashem, make the bracha after he already ate and drank? That's the mashmos of the Gemara. This is the question. And from Rashi it seems also, Amar lahus, he said to the people that were questioning him, this is his response. Mish achal, this is a very, very incisive and blunt, and maybe some sarcasm here and cynicism, a retort where the Rav Chisda says back, he says, Mish achal shum, somebody eats garlic, v'reichon odev, and he has a foul odor from his mouth. Yachser v'yochel shum, acher kadei sheyeh reichon odev, he should go ahead and eat more garlic. They say that there's a joke that one of the greatest diets in the world is the garlic diet, because you look thin from a distance. People keep a distance here. So now garlic, he says that, so Rav Chisda is saying that, if you eat garlic, you're going to smell. Or a person has to be very careful to be me'urev and abrius. That person shouldn't say, well, I'm a millionaire, I can walk around and do whatever I want. Or even if I'm not a millionaire, I could smell. A person has to be careful about their hygiene. A person has to be, wear deodorant. And a person should be, if he eats too many onions, let him stay home that day. What does he have to expose? Because he's trying to stay healthy, he's exposing. It's not proper, it's not appropriate. It's chew gum, do something to cover it up, Person should watch his stomach. These are things that a person, should. But anyhow, so this is Gemara's expression. The Gemara's expression is that somebody that did something foolish, he should do it again. It's a mashal. He's giving something. It's an analogy. That if you did something so rotten and foolish, you should do it again. So if you didn't make a bracha, now you're going to go ahead and make a bracha. What's the point of making a bracha? You don't have the food anymore. So you're going to do a sin. You did a sin by not eating. So now you're going to repeat a sin because you make a bracha. It's a exercise of futility. That's what Gemara says. Okay, then the Gemara says, Ravina. Hilkach, therefore Ravina said, Hilkach, therefore, afilu gamar sudasai, even if a person finishes his meal, yachsu yivarech, he should go ahead and make another bracha. By the way, this is very astounding, because what's the Gemara mean here? Ravina is saying, therefore, even if you ate already, you should go ahead and make a bracha, even though you don't have the food anymore. What is he talking about? He's not corroborating, he's not concurring for Rav Chisda, he's arguing. So therefore the Vilna Gaon, I think, takes the word Hilkach. He said, Hilkach means that he's confirming what Rav Chisda. He's not confirming. He's debating. He's disputing. So therefore, Hilkach doesn't make sense. It's a machlokes, Rav Chisda and Ravina. Okay, now what does it say further? The Gemara says to Tanya, and how do we know that? Tav of Allah. So a person immersed himself in the mikvah of Allah and it comes out. Omer Bal Yosef should say after the immersion, Baruch Shalom Vana Al Tefillah, that blessed Hashem on the immersion. V'lohi. So Gemara says, so that you see from here that you're allowed to go ahead, even though the person immersed already, and he's allowed to go ahead and make a bracha. So too, even if you ate already, and you're not going to eat more, you're not going to immerse more, so you can make a bracha. So Gemara says, Lohi, don't draw a comparison. It's not analogous at all. It's not comparable. Why? Because over there in that instance, the person wasn't fit when he went into the mikvah. But in the case of the food, he was able-bodied. He could have made the bracha, but he was derelict. He didn't. He committed a felony. Yeah, he stole. I don't know if stealing is a felony. I don't know. But anyhow, blue-collar crime, white-collar crime, whatever it is. So he says that the person was fit, but he didn't care. So he says that therefore in the case where a person could have made the bracha and didn't make the bracha, therefore it is something that he lost his opportunity. It is now cast away. The whole chance is cast away. Now, what does it mean that a person went to mikvah and he wasn't fit to make the bracha beforehand, he was only fit afterwards? So Tosfos, the top Tosfos, the famous Tosfos over here, what's the problem? The person is immersing because he's become spiritually impure or contaminated. He can make a bracha. He's still allowed to make a bracha. We remember we had the Gemaras earlier that if he's allowed to learn Torah, if he's allowed to daven, certainly he's allowed to daven still. So why couldn't he make a bracha before he went to the mikveh? He said he wasn't able to make the bracha. He wasn't fit to make the bracha. Therefore, he makes the bracha dafka specifically afterwards. So Gemara Tosfos says that so okay, it brings down Rashi Pshat. It's talking about Baal Keri, who's usher in Divrei Torah. But let's go to Tosfos Pshat. That's what I want to concentrate. That's what I want to focus on. For Yishlomar and for Tosfos answers to Myri Petvilas Gerim is talking about the immersion of a convert. A person who was a Gentile before. Although, The Mefarsh, I think it's Marsha that says, or Rabbi Yaakov Enden maybe, that says that it's called Gershon Iskaya, that a convert that converts, is like he was reborn, and therefore he has a totally new identity. He's like a born again. So he points out, it doesn't say Goyish Iskaya, a Gentile that converts. It says Gershon Iskaya, a convert that converts. So he says, what do you mean? Before the conversion, he wasn't before the conversion, was he a convert? No, he was a Gentile. So you see from here, this neshama was always attached, was always davek to Hashem. It was destined that he should convert. Because his neshama way back at Sinai was one of those from the other nations of the world that said, I want. Yeah. Therefore it's called Gershon Iskaya, not Goyish Iskaya, right? So a convert to my tefillas gerim, okay, what does that mean? Levarech lachar tefillah. She says that a fascinating yesod, that if a Gentile goes into the mikvah, right? Really, all the time that whenever we make a mitzvah, we're always supposed to make a bracha over Elas Yassim. Means that the mitzvah should always be preceded by the bracha. The mitzvah always follows the bracha. The bracha is always before, prior, and then the act happens. But the exception is over here. Is a guy allowed to make a bracha that Hashem, you commanded me? Hashem didn't command him. He's still a guy. Therefore, in the case of convert, he has to specifically, exclusively, make the blessing post the immersion, because he can't do it beforehand. And by the way, that's why any tefillah, any immersion that we have, that's a mitzvah. For example, a woman that goes to mikvah, that has to become ois nida, that she has to now renounce her nida status because she's going to mikvah and now she's permitted, right? L'bayla. So how does she go to the mikvah? She has to say the bracha afterwards. Because it's a low plug, because we don't want to make any distinctions between the obligatory tefillos. And therefore, even though she should really do it before, because you're always supposed to make a bracha before, and although there's machlokes between the Sfardim and Ashkenazim about this, because the Sfardim bring down that there's a big shaila about making a bracha in the water when she may be indecent, and also the fact is that if the mikvah is hot, there's a halacha that says that you're not allowed to make a bracha by hot water because maybe there's a smell of stagnation, and it's considered to be, maybe there's an odor there, maybe it's not considered to be appropriate, so therefore questionable if you're allowed to do that, unless the mikvah is lukewarm or it's cold, then it's okay. But therefore there's a lot of shilas about that, so therefore many Rishonim held that you should make the bracha dafka before you go in, in the antechamber, in the preliminary process. But that's not how Ashkenazim Ramah says, and what we do is that the woman immerses, she makes a bracha, and then she immerses again. That's how we do it. And by the way, it's brought down from the Rishonim that when a convert, when he has to convert, and he has to immerse himself, then he should immerse himself 3 times. That's what's brought down, 3 times. Now, Taisus also says, also by washing the hands, a person also by Netilas Yadayim. We make the bracha after the person rinses his hand with the kli, right? Why? We should make the bracha on Netilas Yadayim and then wash our hands. We don't do that. He says, why not? He says, because there's certain situations, certain types of scenarios where that wouldn't work. When you go out of the bathroom, you go out of the lavatory, the restroom, he says, Adam Adam Roy Levarich, and the person can't make the brach yet, because first he has to wash his hands in the bathroom. So therefore, therefore, we make all the brachas, it's a low plug, not to make any distinction, so that it be universal, and there be a blanket rule. Thank you so much, thank you. And therefore, we make the Netilas Yadayim, we always make the bracha before we wash our hands. Okay, one last sugya, and we're going to wrap up with this. Baruch Hashem, we accomplished so much, Kanai Nahara, but there's so much more to do. I impress upon you, learn. Kihem Chayinu, it's our life. Okay, so the Gemara says, Viter, further down on Nun Aleph on Aleph. The Gemara speaks about, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find it here. Okay, it's the 2 dots, 1, 2, 3, 4, around 10 lines from the bottom. The 2 dots near where it says Zechariah Gimel from the recitation of the pasuk. So it says around 1, 2, 4, 5 lines from the 5 words from the top, from the beginning of the line. Amar Rav Zeh, Amar Rav Avov, Amar Rav Misnisa Tana. Asar dvarim ne'amru b'kosher bracha. You may have a kosher bracha. When you bench, technically speaking, anytime you bench, you're supposed to do it with a kos that's full of wine or grape juice. Okay, Bisman is a lot of people are makbid. If you have 10 people, they do it. but certainly 3 most people don't do, and certainly with 2, even though the Shulchan Aruch brings down 3 different opinions about this, where he says that really you should. It brings down, usually the Shulchan Aruch only brings down 1 opinion, then he says Yesh Omrim. In this instance, he brings down 3 varying opinions, 3 differing opinions. Very, very interesting, very fascinating. Whereas that if there's 2 people, they should have a kos. And then he says that there are those that say that you don't have to, we're not makbid at all today. The Ramah, though, Moshe Isler says that min muvcher, the choice and preferable, ideal way of doing it is any time you bench, certainly if you have 3 people, you should use a kos. The question is, why today is it not prevalent at all? It always bothered me. Why today is not prevalent? So I think the Aruch HaShulchan says it, and he says that, and Ramosha also says it, that the reason why is because back then in Poland and Russia and Lithuania, I guess, and Eastern Europe, people they didn't have the liberties, they didn't have the luxuries that we have today. And they were very, very indigent. They were paupers. Jewish people really, especially, let's say, during certain times in our history when there were a lot of professions, a lot of, vocations that were forbidden from engaging in. And there was a lot of anti-Semitism. So they couldn't afford the wine. And therefore, we didn't want to make things onerous. We don't want to make things that, hardships and challenging positions. Moshe said the same thing. Moshe said that, the reason why he says, but today most people could afford to have grape juice when you bench. He said, but since it became Min Klal Yisrael and became entrenched that we don't do it, so we just kept that. It doesn't mean that it's bad not to do it. It's probably better to do it. But it says what it requires. It says that kosher bracha ton hadacha shtifa, rinsing it out. And then it's all these different. Then it says ituf, that also you should be garbed or vested. Ituf. What does ituf mean? It means l'chara. It means that you should have respect while you're benching, and you should have a special head covering. And on this, the Aruch HaShulchan says it in Hilchos Berachos Mazon. The Mishnah brings down Hilchos Tefillah in Sadik Aleph, and also in benching, that reverence for Tefillah. You're talking to God. So you should, it should be befitting. And you should comport yourself and conduct yourself like you're talking to the king of all kings. So he says you should have a double head. In addition to the yarmulke, you should also have a hat. So a lot of people on Shabbos are very makbid to have the hat, but during the week, maybe not to be makbid. But it is important. Berachos Hamazon is one of the only brachos that we say that, according to all opinions, is doraisa. Berachos Torah is a machlokes Rishonim, whether Berachos Torah is doraisa. Many Rishonim hold it is. But Berachos Hamazon, it's unanimous. That's the total consensus, that it is doraisa. It's B'nai Torah. So you're speaking to Hashem, you're thanking Hashem, and you're doing something doraisa. So you should have, the proper respect and the proper homage. Pay proper homage to Hashem, and therefore it's brought down. If you can, it's always better to have a hat for benching. Okay, so we will, Bez Hashem, conclude over here. And of course, if anybody has any questions or comments, Bez Hashem will spend a little time with that. Yeshikach, everybody, thank you for listening and thank you for coming.